On February 4th, 1983, Karen Carpenter dies from complications of lifelong anorexia nervosa, an eating disorder caused by distorted self-image. At the root of her distorted self-image, the rejection of her mother, who blatantly favored her brother Richard, naming him the golden child, and neglected and rejected and ignored Karen, who learned subconsciously as a young child that she was never going to be good enough, no matter her incredible achievements, international praise, and worldwide recognition. Once a narcissistic parent has established their preference and casted the spell of the golden child versus the black sheep or scapegoat, nothing will change the curse. And it is called a life-destroying curse because it shatters the family structure and ignites a downward spiral that will either directly destroy the rejected child or program them to self-destruct. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. I'm Genvièv, forensic and clinical hypnotherapist, Board Certified Instructor with the NGH, and emergency medicine first responder with the Wilderness Medicine Institute. I spent my life researching brain plasticity and brain rewiring. In response to trauma, abuse, toxic stress, and extreme adversity, to survive and thrive and develop formulas for lasting success and wellness. And today we'll discuss the dichotomy of the golden child versus the black sheep or scapegoat. The term scapegoat originates from scripture, where a community would cast the sins of their people upon a goat that would then be exiled and sent out to spend their lives in the wilderness, supposedly to die, as a goat was not capable initially to survive alone in the wilderness. The scapegoat curse is a character assassination. It is originating from the triangulation behavior of a narcissistic parent who will practice exclusionary behavior, picking a golden child and embarking on a mission to exclude and destroy the other. They will turn the scapegoat into an escape for their own pain, their own shame, and the scapegoat or black sheep will become the punching bag, so to speak, or the shock absorber for the pain and the rage and the frustration of the parent. It is part of a belief that that parent, which is part of the narcissistic personality disorder scheme, that parent will have the right to punish and harm another in response for their own suffering. So the fact of being tagged and being chosen as the scapegoat is the most painful experience that a human being can truly be given to withhold. Because the number one need in all children is to form a strong and lasting and stable attachment to their primary caregiver or parent. It is embedded in our very genetic programming as our only way truly to survive. As a young child, we are entirely dependent upon the protection and the bond that we form with our primary caretaker. And when that bond is shattered, and as a young child we are blamed, we become convinced that we're faulty, that we are not as we should have been. And this creates lasting fractures in our emotional fabric, leading to lifelong anxiety, depression, distorted reality in believing that we do not have the right to live, leading to extreme pain and repeat abuse later on in life as we carry the blueprint internally of being faulty, being deserving of harm, and not deserving love, protection, tenderness, and acceptance. So we are imprinted these beliefs at a time in our life where we don't know who we are. And when we are young, we are born into the world as a blank slate in a way, not knowing who we are, not knowing what the world is and how to relate, respond, comprehend, and react to the world around us. So being imprinted with the belief that we are faulty, that we are broken, that we're not welcome in the world, creates a belief that we do not deserve to be in the world. That belief transfers into thoughts, that transfers into action, reaction, and become a destiny. In my practice, I have made my lifelong expertise in bringing back those who come to seek my help for fractured self-image to the cause of the fractures, bringing the adult self back in time to rescue the younger ones and repair their self-esteem, repair their self-image, repair their sense of worthiness, so that we can continue on our path stronger than we ever were before. Before I continue, I want to make sure that I state that as hypnotherapists, we're not licensed medical providers, we're considered educators, and therefore it is important to always work with your licensed medical providers, your doctors, your licensed healthcare and mental health providers, in addition to specialists like myself who will help you repair and rebuild the broken parts within. So let me tell you a little story, the story of a little girl who was born a long time ago in a faraway country, and in the beginning emerged and discovered life as a warm place in a sunny country by the Mediterranean Sea, where the only person, I was going to say the only son, the source of all of her emotions was her mother. Her father, being very much of a celebrity, was not around. So therefore, she had only her mother to be her full world. As a little girl, your mother is the love of your life. And while the very beginning was warm and flooded with sunshine and sunlight, when she was 2 years old, two strangers appeared to take her away, and her mother was not there. She had arranged for these two individuals to come and take the little girl away from her home, away from her country. And as she was taken away, that little girl was very, very shy and in shock and wanted to be nowhere and with no one other than her mother, who was the love of her life, and began a very long journey where the two individuals, the strangers, were cold and harsh and non-emotional, closed and distant. And the only explanation they gave to the little girl was, looking her straight in the eye, well, your mother is going to have another baby, so you can't be in her feet any longer. You can't be in her way any longer. We need to take you away so your mother can focus on her new baby. And through that days and days of travels, all the little girl could think about, she was 2, And that was the last day of her childhood in a way. And that was the day she became an adult. And during the entire drive, all she could think about was the stupefaction that she never imagined, she never knew, she never realized that she ever was in her mother's way, that she ever was a burden. And weeping internally only because she was in a state of shock. All she could think about was, if only I had known, if only I had known that I was in the way, I would have done anything and everything in my power not to be in the way of my mother. In fact, I could have been an asset, I could have been help, I could have been support. I would have done anything and everything that I could have thought of in order to be of help and not a burden. That journey lasted for days, and she was then left with family and then other family. And even eventually when she was allowed to come back home after months, which for a 2-year-old, months seemed like an eternity. When she was finally allowed to come back home, the entire world had twisted on its axle, and her mother had become overtaken by her physical resemblance with the new baby, who was then immediately labeled the golden child. And the little girl became the black sheep. She grew up constantly being told that she was faulty and not good enough, and that she shouldn't have been there, that her presence was the consequence of everything going wrong in the family unit. So as early as 2 or 3 years of age, she began to embark on a mission to be better, to work harder, to accomplish more that she ever could possibly imagine, in a state of permanent hypervigilance to excel in order to try by all means to regain her mother's acceptance. When you study the golden child versus scapegoat or black sheep triangulation, you realize that once those roles have been established, nothing you can do will ever change these roles. In fact, the more you achieve, the more you typically become rejected. The little girl, for instance, would be on a merry-go-round where the goal was to grab the ponytail, some furry tail that was flying around the children, going up and down and designed to be impossible to grab. Once you grabbed it, you would get a free ride on the merry-go-round. And this little girl was in such a desperate panic to regain her mother's life, her mother's love, a place in her mother's life, that she would leap and every single time grab that tail, which would grant her another ride on the fairy manège, as we call it in French, which ended up getting her expelled from the merry-go-round because the owner would no longer accept her to grab the tail each and every time. This is just a mere example of going above and beyond every possible limitation. You embark on a lifelong panic to overachieve, which is based from fear and not from simple wellness. And it leads to typically catastrophic side effects of that triangulation. First of all, the golden child, being given everything, is robbed of the possibility to develop responsibility and to develop empathy and to develop resiliency. When you're given everything on a silver platter, you learn to never make any efforts and to simply expect the world to support you. It often, not always, but often leads to narcissism in the golden child, himself or herself, because of a sense of entitlement and a sense of exploitative behavior. On the other hand, the scapegoats or black sheep of the family being constantly rejected and constantly blamed and shamed and guilted and accused of the sins of the entire structure of the group, end up on a spiral of self-destruction, which will very often lead to substance abuse. The pain, the internal pain, is so extreme that the mind will embark on a catastrophic and desperate attempt to camouflage that pain, such pain, which will often lead to drug and alcohol dependency or suicidal behavior or self-destruction from that long sustained state of toxic stress. Will emerge what we know as addiction to trauma. So once the scapegoat will grow up and leave the family unit, they will be so accustomed to that toxic stress that they will be subconsciously, automatically programmed to replicate that high level of danger, whether it is with extreme sports, dangerous behavior, or of course repeated abuse, because as imprinted, blueprinted to believe that we're not good enough, this is what we radiate. Our state transmits. We will radiate that conviction that we are not good enough, and therefore deserving of being mistreated, abused, and harmed by others. And until we resolve this blueprint and repair it, this is what we will naturally attract towards ourselves and therefore replicate that pattern. The little girl, you may have guessed, was me. And I worked for years to repair and rebuild the fractures from within and turned it into a lifetime mission to help others to rebuild their inner selves. Breaking the silence is key. Secrecy is what maintains the program in place. And once we realize that we are not faulty, that all of us deserve to be loved and cherished, treasured, protected, and accepted exactly as we are, we can rebuild from our ashes and emerge stronger, emerge brighter, and radiate outwardly more than we ever would if it were not for this extremely difficult challenge. So I am here building an army of light. I am here building an army of survivors and thrivers who stand stronger together than we ever would apart. You will find under this video links to the words and testimonials of those who have worked with me. When we work together forensically, bringing the causes for our current pain, shame, and blame back in time, this gives you, the adult, the incredible opportunity to travel back to the young person you were, the child within, who was shaken, who was beaten, who was terrified, and rescue that child within your love, within your presence, within your wisdom, compassion, and understanding of today. Rescue that little child and finally help that child understand that no matter who said what, who they are, that child is beautiful, unique, and irreplaceable, and deserving to be loved, deserving to be nurtured, deserving to be held in compassion and unconditional acceptance. And once we bridge that gap and repair the fractures within our emotional fabric, now we are emerging stronger, understanding that what we experienced way back in time, long ago, in a faraway reality, were simply reflections of other people's problems, pain, wounds, limitations, and lack of understanding. And that those reflections of other people's issues are not ours to carry. and that we can leave them there where they belong, in a past, in a reality that no longer exists. So today I encourage you to take action, to decide that today is the first day of the rest of your life. Today is the first day of the best chapter of your life, the chapter where you begin the best childhood could have ever imagined. The childhood where you become the mother, you become the father, you become the family for that younger child who has been crying within silently, because under trauma and abuse very often we're not able to cry. We are in a state of shell shock, trauma, dissociative, natural response from our central nervous system to abnormal situations around us. So embracing that child and helping that younger you come back into the you of today to begin a path of coherence, to begin to speak your truth, to begin to radiate who you are outwardly, no matter who thinks what. And when somebody appreciates you for who you are, wonderful. And when they don't, guess what? Their loss. Their loss. Most people out there are too distracted by the reflections of their own issues to be able to see what is in front of them. So when someone is not able to appreciate you for who you are, it's okay. You appreciate yourself. And us together as an army of light, as an army of thrivers, we will stand strong together, and your legacy of loss will become a gift of strength. So again, thank you for tuning in, everyone. I really do appreciate your presence here on my channel, and I encourage you to subscribe and comment below the video, share your light, share your stories, become part of this community of thrivers. I look forward to reading your comments, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's video. And until then, stay strong and shine your truth outwardly.